what does Trump do with the mandate that he has?
I hope as much as possible, as quickly as possible. I think that I think the lesson from last time around is if you don't move fast, the beast ultimately will swallow any individual whole.
Of course.
And so I think he's ready to go in with real determination this time around to move quickly, move fast. I think we need wins behind our back early on. One of the things that I think we learned from last time around is a lot of this is just early momentum, right? Let's say we have all three branches. Let's say we've got judicial branch. We have a great judicial branch right now at the top of the Supreme Court, the best we've had, certainly in our lifetime. But you combine that with the strong electoral mandate for the presidency, a strong decisive majority in the Senate, hopefully get a good Senate majority leader picked. And then Rick Scott would be great for that, but it
can't be John Cornyn. Yeah, John Cornyn is an aggressive liberal. And if Donald Trump wins the popular vote and John Cornyn of Texas, who is way more liberal than a lot of Democrats I know, winds up Senate majority leader, it's crazy.
So assume a few more of those correct pieces fall into place, and then even a majority, at least an impeachment-proof House. I think that we got to go big. We got to go fast. Two major issues right out the gate. One is already the one that Donald Trump's been talking about the entire time. He's pumped up about it, and he is not going to mess around with this, is to fix the illegal immigration crisis and actually seal our national borders. And he is laser focused on that. He has made no secrets about that. That's his top campaign message. He's going to keep that promise, and I think he's going to keep it fast starting on day one. That's number one, and there's a lot to say on that, but it's hard to say what hasn't already been said about what needs to be done.
Right.
It's just about getting in there and doing it. So that's mass deportation. Number one is millions of illegals out of this country and sealing the border along with it. But I'm actually far more intrigued and interested for the long run in what I think of as the second mass deportation that we require, which is the mass deportation of millions of unelected federal bureaucrats out of the DC bureaucracy. And I do think that is what's going to save this country in the long run.
But you can't do that.
I think you actually can.
You can't fire. We can all be fired. I've been fired many times. I'm sure you just lost a presidential race. Like the only group that cannot fail that has actual tenure is not Harvard professors.
Not even. Yep.
It's not even. Yeah. It's federal bureaucrats. Amy Wax just got, tenure is no protection at all compared to the protection of federal employment.
Yeah. So the one difference is, first of all, we have a president who I think has the spine to actually step up and do it. But the second thing is we actually have not to get too, in the weeds here, but we actually have a legal landscape with the current Supreme Court that allows us to do what couldn't have been done in the last half century.
Front and edge, right? So that made them so mad because, as we've known, and as those initial Twitter files indicated, they were working directly with the alphabet agencies to basically suppress people's certain viewpoints on the website. So we know it was happening there. We know for sure that it was happening. We know, for example, with the Hunter Biden laptop situation, we know for a fact Meta suppressed that. So they want to be able to control the conversation, and but that was a cultural shift. And they are like she is now, lashing out because, information is flowing a lot more freer than what it had been before. And people are able to make those decisions for themselves as far as what's real, what's fake. Either way, they're not going to the fucking View. I think there's two ways to answer that. You always got to look at it from the general populace and how they either reject something or embrace something, as well as the shot callers and how they approach it. I think that distinction is important.
To see my character's face on so many thumbnails.
Explanation of the introject. So in psychology, an introject is a fancy term from psychoanalytic theory for an internalization. Some psychologists do just say internalization. When it is natural and healthy, as it might be in your childhood, it's because what you've done is you've internalized the opinions, the attitudes, the thoughts, the messaging of the adults around you so that you can develop something largely, let's say, like a conscience. This is good, this is bad. I should do that, I shouldn't do that. This is safe, this is dangerous. That's when it's healthy, that's when it's natural. In adulthood, when it's coming from trauma, a traumatic experience, it becomes an inner critic. So the voice that's running inside of your head in a traumatic experience, when you have a trauma-induced introject, this is a defense mechanism. That doesn't mean it's effective. It shouldn't be implied. A defense mechanism in psychoanalytic theory is always maladaptive. It's always ineffectual. It doesn't work. It's a defense mechanism that never works. So when you're experiencing a very traumatic event or a traumatic relationship, you will also internalize the person who's giving you the trauma. What does that manifest as? So if it's healthy, kind of like a conscience or an inner guide. If it's unhealthy, it's an inner critic. The introject, internalized avatar of that person. So if after this video, or you watch a couple of my videos, you think, what would Richard say about this? You have an introject, you have an internalized version of me, a simulation of me that can run. When it's traumatic, when it's from a defense mechanism, it will always be negative, and it will give you negative words and messaging. You're not good enough. Only I would ever love somebody like you. Nobody really likes you, so on and so forth. But it also has intentions for you. And a traumatically induced introject typically has the intention of destruction for the target. So whether you're the target of narcissistic abuse or you're a therapist or coach working with narcissistic abuse, it's a very important priority to deal with the introject of the emotionally abusive partner that the target has internalized. The way I train people to do this is a simple 3-step process. We identify the introject, we then resist the introject, and then we alter the introject. If you want to learn more,
in transition. And sadly, there are a lot of them. We have the benefit of seeing what's happened in those other countries, though. And what we know is that the more ground the authoritarian takes, the harder it is to ever get that ground back.